The morning sun cast long shadows across Highway 47 when Kepler Whitmore's ancient pickup truck wheezed to a stop on the shoulder. Steam poured from under the hood like a geyser, and his 23-year-old mare, Stellaris, shifted nervously in the horse trailer behind him. The irony wasn't lost on him. Here he was, trying to rush his beloved horse to the veterinary clinic, and his truck had given up the ghost just 3 miles from help. Kepler climbed out, his weathered hands shaking as he opened the trailer door. Stellaris had been his companion through 2 decades of struggling to keep his small farm afloat. She'd pulled plows when he couldn't afford a tractor, carried him through the worst storms, and somehow always seemed to understand when the bills piled higher than the hay bales. Now, at her advanced age, she was showing signs of serious illness. Labored, breathing, cloudy eyes, and a weakness in her legs that made his heart ache. "Easy, girl," he whispered, stroking her graying muzzle. "We're gonna figure this out." The highway stretched empty in both directions, and Kepler's cell phone showed no signal. He was contemplating the impossible task of walking 3 miles while leading a sick horse when the distinctive purr of an expensive engine approached from behind. A sleek obsidian Bentley Mulsanne pulled up alongside his broken-down truck, its chrome gleaming like liquid mercury in the morning light. The driver's window descended with barely a whisper, revealing a man who couldn't have been more different from Kepler if he'd been designed by committee. Bronson Kelridge wore a suit that probably cost more than Kepler's annual income, his silver hair perfectly styled despite the early hour. The scent of expensive cologne drifted from the luxury vehicle, mixing oddly with the smell of hay and horse. "Trouble?" Bronson asked, his voice carrying the refined accent of old money and elite education. Kepler wiped his hands on his faded jeans, suddenly aware of the patches and stains that told the story of his financial struggles. "Truck broke down, and my horse. She's real sick. Need to get her to Dr. Vance's clinic down the road." Bronson stepped out of his Bentley, and Kepler noticed the man moved with the quiet confidence that came from never having to worry about money. His Italian leather shoes crunched on the gravel as he approached the trailer, and Kepler braced himself for the typical reaction: polite disinterest followed by a quick retreat to air-conditioned comfort. Instead, Bronson walked directly to Stellaris and extended his hand toward her nose. The mare, who usually shied away from strangers, surprised Kepler by stepping forward and gently nuzzling the billionaire's palm. "Beautiful animal," Bronson said softly, his business facade melting away as he studied the horse with genuine concern. "How long has she been unwell?" 3 days now," Kepler replied, his voice thick with worry. "She's been my partner for 20 years. Can't afford to lose her, but can't afford the treatment either." The words hung in the air between them. A poor farmer's brutal honesty meeting a billionaire's carefully constructed world. Bronson continued stroking Stellaris's neck, his expression thoughtful as he processed what he'd heard. "What's your name?" Bronson asked. "Kepler Whitmore, and you are?" "Bronson Kelridge." He paused, still focused on the horse. "How much does treatment typically cost?" Kepler's laugh was bitter. "More than I've got, that's for sure." What happened next would replay in Kepler's mind for years to come. Instead of offering empty sympathy or loose change, Bronson pulled out his phone and made a call that would change everything. "Garrison, I need you to send the emergency transport truck to Highway 47, mile marker 23, he said into the device. "We have a horse that needs immediate medical attention." He paused, listening to the response. "No, not for the estate. For a friend. And call Dr. Vance's clinic. Tell them we're bringing in a mare and that money is no object." Kepler's mouth fell open. "Sir, I can't let you." Bronson held up a hand. 20 years ago, I made my first fortune in agricultural technology. Started with nothing but an idea about improving crop yields. You know what I learned? The best business insights came from farmers like you. People who understood the land, the animals, the real work. He gestured toward Stellaris. "This horse represents something I've been trying to recapture in my corporate boardrooms ever since." Within 15 minutes, a gleaming transport truck arrived, equipped with a hydraulic lift and climate-controlled compartment. 2 veterinary technicians emerged, their uniforms bearing the Kelridge Industries logo. They moved with practiced efficiency. But Kepler noticed how gently they handled Stellaris, speaking to her in soothing tones as they guided her into the specialized trailer. "How do you have a mobile vet unit?" Kepler asked, bewildered. "I own several horse breeding facilities," Bronson explained. "Prize thoroughbreds, racing stock. This equipment usually transports animals worth hundreds of thousands of dollars." He looked at Stellaris, now settling into the luxurious transport. Today it's carrying something even more valuable, 20 years of partnership and trust. They followed the transport in Bronson's Bentley, leaving Kepler's broken truck to be dealt with later. The contrast was surreal. One moment he'd been stranded on the roadside with a dying horse and a dead engine, and now he was riding in leather seats that cost more than most people's cars, watching his mare receive care typically reserved for millionaires' prized animals. At the clinic, Dr. Vance emerged, looking puzzled. "Mr. Kelridge, I wasn't expecting you today. Is there a problem with Thunderbolt?" "This isn't about my horses," Bronson replied. "This is Stellaris, and she belongs to my friend Kepler. I want her to receive the same level of care you'd give to any animal I bring here." Dr. Vance, a seasoned veterinarian who'd treated both farm animals and championship horses, immediately understood. His examination was thorough and gentle, his hands moving over Stellaris with decades of experience. The diagnosis wasn't good. Advanced arthritis, early signs of kidney disease, and a respiratory infection that had gone untreated too long. "She's very sick," Dr. Vance said quietly. "Treatment will be extensive. We're looking at IV antibiotics, anti-inflammatory medications, special feed supplements, and ongoing monitoring. For a horse her age..." "Cost?" Bronson interrupted. "Several thousand, possibly more depending on how she responds." Kepler felt his world crumbling. Even with Bronson's help, he'd never be able to repay such generosity. "I can't accept this," he said. "It's too much." Bronson turned to him, and for the first time, Kepler saw something raw and honest in the billionaire's eyes. "Kepler, I'm going to tell you something I've never told anyone in business. My success came from forgetting where I started. I've spent 20 years surrounding myself with people who only see dollar signs." He gestured toward Stellaris, who was already looking more comfortable in the clinic's care. "When I saw how you looked at this horse, I remembered something I'd lost, the understanding that some relationships can't be measured in profit margins." The treatment began immediately, but the real surprise came the next morning when Bronson arrived at Kepler's farm in a different vehicle, a practical Ford pickup truck that looked almost ordinary compared to his usual luxury cars. He wore jeans and work boots, though they were clearly expensive versions of everyday wear. "I wanted to see where Stellaris calls home," he explained as Kepler led him around the property. The farm was small but immaculately maintained. Every fence post stood straight, every gate hung true, and the modest barn showed signs of constant care despite its age. Kepler had clearly invested every spare moment and dollar into keeping his operation functional, even if he couldn't afford to make it beautiful. "How long have you been here?" Bronson asked, running his hand along a fence rail that had been mended so many times it told the story of decades of hard work. 37 years, Kepler replied. "Bought it with money I saved from construction work, back when land was cheaper and dreams seemed more possible." He pointed toward a faded sign by the barn that read Whitmore Family Farm. "Had plans for expansion, maybe some cattle, bigger crops, but life had other ideas." Bronson noticed details that most wealthy visitors would miss. The way Kepler had rigged an ingenious rainwater collection system, how he'd modified old equipment to extend its life far beyond normal expectations, the small garden that provided vegetables for his table. It was innovation born of necessity, the kind of practical creativity that had built America. "You know," Bronson said thoughtfully, "I've been looking for investment opportunities in sustainable agriculture. Small-scale operations that prove profitability doesn't have to mean destroying the environment." He gestured around the farm. "This is exactly what I've been searching for." Kepler's expression grew wary. "I'm not looking for charity, Mr. Kelridge." "Neither am I," Bronson replied. I'm looking for partnership. You've proven you can make this land productive with virtually no capital investment. Imagine what you could do with proper funding and modern equipment. They spent the morning walking every acre, with Kepler explaining his methods and challenges. Bronson asked detailed questions about crop rotation, soil health, and water management. Questions that revealed a deeper understanding of agriculture than his expensive clothes might suggest. The conversation was interrupted by a call from Dr. Vance. Stellaris was responding well to treatment, but her recovery would require weeks of care and monitoring. The estimated cost had grown to over $8,000. I'll handle it, Bronson said immediately, but Kepler shook his head. I need to contribute something, the farmer insisted. Even if it's just labor, let me work off part of the debt. Bronson studied him for a long moment. What if I told you there might be a way to do more than just work off a debt? What if you could earn enough to ensure Stellaris gets the best care for the rest of her life? He outlined his vision, a pilot program that would demonstrate sustainable farming methods using Kepler's land as a testing ground. The farm would remain Kepler's, but Kelridge Industries would provide equipment, expertise, and marketing support. In return, they'd share the profits and use the operation as a model for future investments. You'd still be farming, Bronson explained, but instead of struggling to survive, you'd be helping other small farmers learn methods that could save their operations too. Kepler was quiet for a long time, looking out over land that had been his life's work. Why would you want to partner with someone who can't even afford to fix his truck? Because, Bronson said with a smile, you're the only person I've met. Years who loves something more than money, and that's exactly the kind of partner I need. The transformation began within a week, but not in the way Kepler had expected. Instead of arriving with expensive machinery and corporate consultants, Bronson showed up each morning in his work clothes, ready to learn alongside the farmer he'd decided to trust. I haven't done manual labor in 2 decades, Bronson admitted, as they repaired a section of fence together. My board of directors would probably have me committed if they could see me now. Why are you really doing this? Kepler asked, steadying a post while Bronson drove in the nails. You could buy 1,000 farms like mine without blinking. Bronson paused, hammer in hand. My father was a sharecropper in Mississippi, worked land that wasn't his, never made enough to own anything. He died believing he was a failure. He resumed hammering, each strike precise and measured. I built my empire to prove him wrong, but somewhere along the way I lost sight of what he actually taught me. That honest work has value beyond what it puts in your bank account. The partnership evolved organically. Bronson brought technical expertise and financial resources, while Kepler provided practical knowledge and deep understanding of the land. They installed solar panels to reduce energy costs, implemented precision irrigation systems, and introduced heritage seed varieties that commanded premium prices at farmers' markets. But the real breakthrough came when Stellaris returned home, after 3 weeks of intensive treatment. The mare was transformed, alert, energetic, and moving with an ease she hadn't shown in years. Dr. Vance had worked miracles with modern veterinary medicine, but it was clear that her recovery represented something larger than just successful treatment. She looks 10 years younger, Kepler marveled as Stellaris trotted around her pasture, clearly delighted to be home. Good nutrition, proper medical care, and reduced stress, Bronson observed. Same principles that apply to any living system, including farms. Their success began attracting attention. Other struggling farmers stopped by to see what was happening at the Whitmore place, drawn by rumors of a partnership between a billionaire and a small-time agriculturalist. Word spread through the agricultural community like seeds on the wind. Darlacuaras Hutchinson, who ran the neighboring dairy operation, was the first to ask for help. Her herd was producing well, but processing and distribution costs were eating up her profits. Bronson saw an opportunity to create a cooperative processing facility that could serve multiple small farms in the region. We're not just saving your farm anymore, he told Kepler as they walked through rows of thriving vegetables. We're potentially saving an entire way of life. The pilot program exceeded every projection. Within 6 months, the farm's revenue had increased by 400%, but more importantly, it had become profitable without sacrificing environmental sustainability or animal welfare. Kelridge Industries began documenting every aspect of the operation, preparing to replicate the model across the country. The real test came when Bronson's board of directors demanded a formal presentation about his agricultural experiment. The boardroom was filled with skeptical executives who saw farming as an antiquated industry, ripe for consolidation and mechanization. "Gentlemen," Bronson began, standing before a room of tailored suits and calculating expressions, "I want to introduce you to the future of American agriculture." He presented photos of the Whitmore farm, before and after, profit margins, environmental impact studies, and testimonials from neighboring farmers who were already implementing similar methods. But the centerpiece of his presentation was a video testimonial from Kepler himself, standing beside a healthy, vigorous Stellaris. "This partnership taught me that innovation doesn't always come from laboratories or boardrooms," Kepler said in the video. "Sometimes it comes from combining old wisdom with new resources, from recognizing that taking care of the land means taking care of each other." The boardroom remained silent for several moments after the presentation ended. Finally, Cordelia Thatch, the company's most senior director, spoke up. "Bronson, this is all very heartwarming, but what's the scalability? How do we turn this into a billion-dollar operation?" It was exactly the question Bronson had expected, and exactly the wrong question to ask. "Cordelia, that's precisely the thinking that's destroying American agriculture. We don't need another billion-dollar operation. We need 1,000 profitable small operations that employ local people and strengthen rural communities." The debate that followed was intense. Some board members saw the potential for sustainable growth and community impact, while others worried about profit margins and shareholder returns. The discussion might have continued indefinitely if not for an unexpected interruption. Kepler appeared in the boardroom doorway, hat in hand, looking completely out of place among the mahogany and marble. He'd driven 6 hours to deliver news that couldn't wait for a phone call. "Sorry to interrupt," he said, his voice carrying the quiet authority of someone who'd lived through real hardship. "But I thought you folks should know. We just received our organic certification, and we've got contracts with 3 restaurant chains that want to feature our produce as locally sourced and sustainably grown." He pulled out a folder of contracts, each representing thousands of dollars in guaranteed revenue. More importantly, 7 farms in our county have asked to join the cooperative we're forming. We're not just talking about one success story anymore. We're talking about revitalizing an entire region. The board members examined the contracts with growing interest. These weren't charity cases or feel-good experiments. They were legitimate business opportunities with impressive profit potential. "There's something else," Kepler continued. "The State Agriculture Department wants to use our methods as a template for their rural development program. They're offering grants and tax incentives for farms that adopt our sustainability practices." Bronson watched his board members' expressions change as they realized they weren't just looking at a single successful farm, but at the foundation of an entirely new business model, one that could be profitable while also addressing rural poverty, environmental concerns, and food security issues. "How much capital would expansion require?" asked Harrison Dupree, the chief financial officer. "Less than you might think," Kepler replied. "Most of our innovations use existing equipment in new ways, or simple technologies that any farmer can afford once they're earning decent profits. The real investment is in knowledge transfer and initial working capital." Over the next several hours, the discussion transformed from skepticism to strategic planning. By evening, Kelridge Industries had approved a $50 million initiative to establish similar partnerships with small farms across the Midwest and South. But for Kepler, the most meaningful moment came when Bronson walked him to his truck after the meeting. "You know," Bronson said, "when I first saw you on that highway, I thought I was helping you. I'm beginning to realize it was the other way around." Kepler smiled, climbing into his truck, a new one, purchased with profits from The farm's success. Maybe we helped each other. That's what partnerships are supposed to be about. As he drove home through the darkness, Kepler reflected on how much had changed since that morning, when his truck had broken down and Stellaris had been dying in a trailer on Highway 47. The farm was prosperous, the horse was healthy, and an entire community was beginning to believe in possibilities they'd almost forgotten. But the real transformation wasn't measured in dollars or acres. It was in the recognition that sometimes the most valuable investments are the ones that can't be quantified on a balance sheet.